Picture this: a foggy London night, a grand old manor, and a chilling séance where the dead seem to whisper, but one guest won't leave the table alive. Welcome to Poirot and the Séance of Silent Death, where secrets unravel and Hercule Poirot's little grey cells face their darkest challenge yet. The scene is set, folks, in the heart of 1920s England, where the air is thick with mystery and the promise of something eerie. Our story begins with the world's greatest detective, Poirot, receiving a peculiar invitation. It's a crisp autumn evening, and Poirot is sipping his tisane in his cosy London flat when a letter arrives, sealed with crimson wax and smelling faintly of lavender. The letter, penned in elegant cursive, invites him to Ravenwood Manor, a sprawling estate owned by the enigmatic Lady Eleanor Blackwood. She is hosting a séance, a gathering to contact the spirits, and she insists Poirot's presence is essential. Why? The letter hints at a looming danger, a secret tied to the manor's shadowy past. Now, if you're like me, you're already wondering what's so special about this séance, and why does a detective like Poirot need to be there? Let's dive in and find out. Ravenwood Manor sits on the misty outskirts of London, its ivy-covered walls hiding decades of secrets. Poirot, with his impeccable moustache and razor-sharp mind, isn't one for ghostly nonsense, but the mention of danger piques his curiosity. He packs his suitcase, polishes his shoes, and heads to the manor, joined by his loyal friend, Captain Hastings. The journey is quiet, the countryside cloaked in fog, setting the perfect stage for what's to come. When they arrive, the manor's towering gates creak open, revealing a cast of characters who could have stepped out of a Gothic novel. There's Lady Eleanor, a widow with piercing eyes and a cryptic smile. Her nephew, Charles, a nervous young man with a gambling debt. Miss Clara, a spiritualist with a penchant for theatrics. And Mr. Grayson, a gruff businessman who scoffs at the supernatural. Each guest, Poirot notes, seems to carry a hidden burden, their polite smiles masking tension. The dining room, where they gather for dinner, is lit by flickering candles, and the conversation dances around the reason for the séance of death. Years ago, that no one wants to talk about as the evening unfolds. Poirot observes every detail, the way Charles fidgets with his cufflinks, the way Clara's eyes dart to the portrait of a stern-faced man above the fireplace. The séance is set for midnight, in a room sealed off for years, rumoured to be haunted by the spirit of Lord Blackwood, Eleanor's late husband. Hastings, ever the skeptic, whispers to Poirot that it's all a bit of a lark. But Poirot's little grey cells are already at work. Why invite a detective to a séance? Is it to uncover a truth or to hide one? The chapter closes with the clock striking 11, the guests moving toward the séance room, and Poirot's keen eyes catching a fleeting glance between two guests, a glance that speaks of fear or perhaps guilt. The stage is set, and the mystery is just beginning. So, what's next? Will the séance reveal a ghostly truth, or something far more human and sinister? Stick with us as we head into Chapter 2, where the lights dim and the spirit saw someone starts to speak. If you're loving this so far, hit that like button and subscribe for more thrilling tales. Let's keep unraveling this mystery together. The clock strikes midnight, and the air in Ravenwood Manor's séance room feels heavy, like it's holding its breath. The guests are seated around a circular mahogany table, its surface polished to a mirror-like shine, reflecting the dim glow of a single chandelier overhead. The room is draped in shadows, with heavy velvet curtains blocking out the moonlight, and the faint smell of incense lingers, curling up from a brass burner in the corner. Hercule Poirot sits at one end, his hands folded neatly, his eyes scanning. Every face like a hawk. Captain Hastings, beside him, shifts uncomfortably, muttering under his breath about the whole thing being a load of rot. But there's no mistaking the tension, everyone's on edge, and it's not just the promise of ghosts. This chapter's all about the séance itself, the moment where the line between the living and the dead blurs, and Poirot starts to see the cracks in this carefully staged gathering. Let's dive into the eerie details and see what secrets start to slip out. The spiritualist, Miss Clara, takes charge, her voice low and dramatic as she instructs everyone to join hands. Her flowing robes and jangling bracelets add to the theatrical vibe. But Poirot notices her hands tremble slightly as she places a crystal ball in the table's center. Lady Eleanor, at the head of the table, looks regal but tense, her fingers gripping Charles's hand a bit too tightly. Charles, meanwhile, keeps glancing at the door, as if he's expecting someone or something to burst in. Mr. Grayson, the skeptical businessman, rolls his eyes but complies, his meaty hand engulfing Clara's delicate one. The fifth guest, a quiet governess named Miss Evelyn, barely speaks, her pale face half hidden in the shadows. Poirot's mind is already cataloguing these details, the nervous tics, the forced calm, the way the room feels like a powder keg waiting for a spark. Clara begins chanting, her voice rising and falling, calling on the spirit of Lord Blackwood. The chandelier flickers, though there's no breeze, and Hastings lets out a nervous chuckle, quickly silenced by a glare from Eleanor now. Let's paint the scene a bit more. The table is set with a black cloth embroidered with strange symbols, and a single candle burns at each guest's place, casting long shadows that dance on the walls. Clara's chant grows louder, and she asks the spirit to give a sign. At first, nothing happens, just the creak of the old manor settling. But then, a low, guttural moan echoes from nowhere, and the temperature seems to drop. Charles gasps, his hand jerking in Eleanor's grip, and even Grayson's smirk falters. Poirot, though, remains still, his eyes darting to Clara's face. Is she orchestrating this, or is she as surprised as the others? The moan comes again, louder, and the candle flames flicker wildly. Miss Evelyn lets out a small whimper, and Hastings whispers, "Good Lord, Poirot, do you hear that?" But Poirot's not watching the candles, he's watching the guests. He notices Grayson's jaw clench, Eleanor's lips purse, and Clara's eyes widen, but not in fear and calculation. Then, the first real clue emerges. Clara claims the spirit, is speaking through her, her voice dropping to a hoarse whisper. Betrayal, she intones, betrayal in this house. The word hangs in the air, and Poirot sees it hit like a shockwave. Charles's face drains of colour, Eleanor's grip tightens, and Grayson shifts uncomfortably. Miss Evelyn stares at the table, her hands trembling. Poirot's little grey cells are buzzing now. Betrayal could mean anything. A business deal gone wrong, a family secret, or something darker. He makes a mental note of how each guest reacts, knowing these reactions are the first threads of the mystery unraveling. Clara continues, saying the spirit demands truth, but before she can elaborate, a loud thud echoes from the corner of the room. Everyone jumps, and Hastings nearly breaks the hand-holding circle. It's just a book falling from a shelf, or is it? Poirot's eyes narrow. He saw no one near that shelf, but he also saw Clara's foot shift under the table. A trick, perhaps. The séance takes a darker turn when Clara, now in a trance-like state, points a shaky finger at the group. "One of you," she whispers, "knows the truth about his death." The room goes silent, the only sound the faint crackle of the incense burner. Poirot's mind races. Lord Blackwood died years ago, officially of a heart attack. But the whispers in London's high society suggested poison. Is this séance a ploy to expose a killer, or to distract from one? He notices Charles sweating, his eyes darting to Eleanor, who remains stone-faced. Grayson mutters something about poppycock, but his voice lacks conviction. Miss Evelyn, the governess, is the only one who seems genuinely terrified, her eyes fixed on the crystal ball as if it might explode. The chapter's climax comes when Clara suddenly slumps forward, her head hitting the table with a dull thud. The guests gasp, and Hastings leaps up, breaking the circle. "She's fainted," he cries, but Poirot's already moving, checking her pulse. She's alive, but her collapse feels staged too convenient, too dramatic. As the guests scramble to revive Clara, Poirot steps back, his mind piecing together the puzzle. The moan, the fallen book, the word betrayal, are they supernatural or carefully orchestrated? He knows one thing. This séance isn't about contacting the dead. It's about exposing the living. The chapter wraps up with Clara coming to, claiming the spirit overwhelmed her, but Poirot's not buying it. He catches a fleeting look between her and Eleanor, a look that says they're hiding something. The guests are shaken, the called off for the night, but the tension lingers like the fog outside. Poirot whispers to Hastings, "Mon ami, the real performance is yet to come." And with that, we're poised for the next twist. What's behind Clara's theatrics, and who's pulling the strings? Stay tuned for Chapter 3, where Poirot starts digging into the manor's dark history. If you're hooked, smash that like button and drop a comment. What do you think the spirit meant by betrayal? Let's keep this mystery rolling. The séance may have ended, but the real mystery at Ravenwood Manor is just heating up. It's well past midnight now, and the guests have scattered to their rooms, their nerves frayed from Clara's dramatic collapse and those eerie words about betrayal. The manor feels alive with secrets, its creaking floors and shadowy corners whispering tales of the past. Hercule Poirot, ever the observer, isn't ready to retire just yet. With Captain Hastings trailing behind, muttering about needing a stiff drink, Poirot decides to explore the manor's underbelly, its history, its ghosts, and the truth about Lord Blackwood's death. This chapter dives deep into the manor's dark past, peeling back layers of gossip, scandal, and hidden motives. We'll follow Poirot as he uncovers clues, questions the guests, and starts to see the threads of a crime that might not be as buried as some would hope. Buckle up, because this is where things get juicy, and Poirot's little grey cells go into overdrive. The séance room is empty now, the candles snuffed out, leaving only the faint scent of wax and incense. Poirot, with his notebook in hand, lingers by the fireplace, studying the portrait of Lord Blackwood that looms over the mantel. The man's stern face, with its sharp cheekbones and piercing eyes, seems to watch the room, and Poirot can't shake the feeling that those painted eyes hold a clue. Hastings, pacing nervously, suggests they call it a night, but Poirot shakes his head. "Mon ami," he says, "the night is young, and the past is speaking. We must listen." He's right, Ravenwood Manor is more than just a house. It's a vault of secrets, and Poirot's determined to crack it open. He starts by examining the room itself, the heavy oak panelling, the locked cabinet in the corner, the faint scratches on the floor near the table. Could they be from furniture moved? To stage the séance's effects, or something else entirely? Poirot's mind is already racing, connecting dots that others might miss. Their first stop is the Manor's library, a cavernous room lined with dusty tomes and leather-bound journals. The air is thick with the smell of old paper, and a single lamp casts long shadows across the shelves. Poirot, ever meticulous, runs his fingers along the spines, looking for anything that might shed light on Lord Blackwood's death. Hastings, trying to be helpful, pulls out a book at random, only to sneeze from the dust. "Really, Poirot," he grumbles, "can't we just ask Lady Eleanor what this is all about?" But Poirot's not one for direct questions, not yet. He finds a ledger tucked behind a row of novels, its pages yellowed but intact. It's a record of the Manor's finances from a decade ago, around the time Lord Blackwood died. The entries show large sums of money moving to unknown accounts, and one name keeps popping up: Charles Blackwood, Lady Eleanor's nephew. Interesting, Poirot thinks. Was Charles in debt even then? And did it have anything to do with his uncle's sudden demise? Poirot's next move is to talk to the guests, but discreetly. He finds Miss Evelyn, the governess, in the drawing room, sitting alone with a cup of tea that's long gone cold. Her hands are still trembling, and her eyes dart nervously. When Poirot sits beside her, with his gentle, almost fatherly tone, he coaxes her into talking. She reveals she's been with the Blackwood family for years, hired to teach Charles when he was a boy. Lord Blackwood was strict, she says, her voice barely above a whisper. He and Charles fought often, about money, mostly. She hesitates, then adds, and there was talk, you know, after he died. People said it wasn't a heart attack. They said poison. Her words hang in the air, and Poirot's eyes gleam. Poison, he thinks, is a coward's weapon, but a clever one. He presses her gently, but she clams up, saying she's said too much. As she hurries away, Poirot notices a small locket slip from her pocket, engraved with the initials L.B., Lord Blackwood, or someone else. Back in the hall, Poirot crosses paths with Mr. Grayson, who's lighting a cigar and looking more annoyed than spooked. Grayson's a man of business, blunt and impatient, and he's quick to dismiss the séance as a lot of hogwash. But Poirot, with his knack for reading people, senses Grayson's bravado is a front. "You knew Lord Blackwood, Nan?" Poirot asks, his voice light but probing. Grayson shrugs, saying they had business dealings, nothing more. But his eyes flicker when Poirot mentions the word betrayal from the séance. That Clara woman's a fraud, Grayson snaps, puffing smoke. She's stirring up trouble for no reason. Poirot smiles politely, but his mind is elsewhere. Why is Grayson so defensive? And what business did he have with a man who died under suspicious circumstances? The chapter's tension ramps up when Poirot and Hastings return to the séance room, drawn by a faint noise of scraping, like something being dragged. They find Charles there, alone, trying to pry open the locked cabinet. He jumps when he sees them, stammering that he was just checking something. Poirot's not fooled. He notices a key in Charles's hand, one that doesn't fit the cabinet's lock. "Perhaps you seek something specific, Monsieur Charles?" Poirot asks, his tone deceptively mild. Charles mumbles an excuse and flees, leaving Poirot to examine the cabinet. It's old, ornate, and definitely hiding something, perhaps papers, perhaps evidence. Poirot makes a mental note to return later with the right tools. For now, he's got enough to chew on: Charles's debts, Evelyn's locket, Grayson's unease, and the ever-present shadow of Lady Eleanor. who seems to orchestrate this entire gathering with a purpose. Poirot hasn't yet cracked as the night deepens. Poirot and Hastings retire to their rooms, but not before Poirot pauses at a window overlooking the manor's foggy grounds. He sees a figure moving in the garden, a woman, perhaps Clara, slipping into the shadows. Is she meeting someone or setting up another spiritual trick? Poirot's not sure, but he knows one thing. The séance was just the opening act. The real drama lies in the living, not the dead. This manor, with its secrets and lies, is a puzzle, and Poirot's determined to solve it before someone else ends up silent permanently. We're heading into Chapter 4, where Poirot digs deeper into Lord Blackwood's death and uncovers a clue that changes everything. If you're gripped by this mystery, hit that like button and drop a comment. What's your theory on who's hiding what? Let's keep unraveling this tangled web together. The fog outside Ravenwood Manor thickens as the night stretches on, wrapping the estate in a ghostly shroud that seems to pulse with secrets. Hercule Poirot, never one to sleep when a mystery beckons, stands by his window, his sharp eyes fixed on the shadowy figure he spotted in the garden. Was it Miss Clara, the theatrical spiritualist, sneaking out for a midnight rendezvous, or someone else, moving with purpose under the cover of mist? Captain Hastings, still rattled from the séance, and Charles's suspicious behaviour urges Poirot to get some rest. But Poirot's little grey cells are buzzing too loudly to ignore. This chapter takes us into the heart of the manor's grounds, where a single clue glint of metal in the moonlight threatens to unravel the carefully woven lies of Ravenwood's guests. We'll follow Poirot as he ventures into the fog, uncovers a hidden truth, and starts to piece together the puzzle of Lord Blackwood's death. Hold onto your hats, folks. This is where the mystery starts to twist in ways you won't see coming. Poirot, dressed in his immaculate overcoat and clutching his cane, slips out of the manor with Hastings reluctantly in tow. The air is damp and cold, the kind of chill that seeps into your bones, and the garden is a maze of overgrown roses and crumbling statues. The moonlight barely pierces the fog, casting eerie shapes that make Hastings jump at every rustle. Really, Poirot, he whispers, this is madness. What if it's a trap? But Poirot, undeterred, follows the path where he saw the figure vanish, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the muddy earth. He's not chasing ghosts, he's chasing evidence, and his instincts tell him the garden holds something vital. As they move deeper, the faint scent of lavender lingers, the same scent from the invitation letter. A coincidence? Poirot thinks not. His eyes scan the ground, the hedges, the stone benches, searching for anything out of place. They reach a small clearing where a neglected fountain stands, its basin choked with leaves. There, glinting in the moonlight, Poirot spots it a small silver cigarette case, half buried in the dirt. He kneels, careful not to disturb the surrounding soil, and retrieves it with a handkerchief. The case is engraved with the initials L.B. Lord Blackwood, perhaps, or another clue entirely. Hastings peers over his shoulder, muttering, could belong to anyone. But Poirot's already examining the case, noting its weight, the faint scratches on its surface, and a tiny smear of what looks like dried ink, or is it blood? Inside, there's a single cigarette, but more importantly, a folded scrap of paper tucked into the lid. Poirot unfolds it carefully, revealing a handwritten note. Meet me at the fountain, midnight. We must end this. The handwriting is shaky, urgent, and unsigned. Poirot's mind races. This note could be years old, from the night Lord Blackwood died, or it could be fresh, tied to tonight's séance. Either way, it's a thread he intends to pull. Back inside the manor, Poirot decides to confront the guests one by one, starting with Lady Eleanor. He finds her in the drawing room, sitting by the fire, a glass of brandy in her hand. Her composure is flawless, but Poirot notices the slight tightening of her jaw when he mentions the garden. "A cigarette case, madame," he says, holding it up but not handing it over. "Found in your garden, with initials that may belong to your late husband." Eleanor's eyes flicker, but she dismisses it with a wave. "My husband smoked, yes, but so do many men. It could be Charles's, or even Mr. Grayson's." Her voice is steady, but Poirot catches a faint quiver. He presses further, asking about the note, but Eleanor claims ignorance, saying the garden hasn't been tended in years. Poirot doesn't believe her quick deflection is too practiced, and he makes a mental note to check her handwriting against the notes. Next, Poirot corners Charles in the billiard room, where the young man is nursing a whiskey and looking like he hasn't slept in days. The sight of the cigarette case makes Charles pale, his hands shaking as he lights a cigarette of his own. "Never seen it," he stammers, but his eyes betray him, darting to the case like it's a venomous snake. Poirot, with his disarming smile, asks about the note, reading it aloud, "Meet me at the fountain, midnight." Charles nearly chokes, claiming he knows nothing, but his nervous laughter and sweaty brow tell a different story. Poirot doesn't push too hard. He knows Charles is close to cracking, and a little time might loosen his tongue. As they leave, Hastings whispers, "He's guilty as sin, Poirot." But Poirot shakes his head. Guilt, mon ami, is not always so simple. We must look deeper. The investigation takes a turn when Poirot returns to the library. Determined to cross-reference the ledger he found earlier with the note's handwriting. He spends an hour poring over old letters and documents, his meticulous nature shining through as he compares loops and slants. The note's handwriting doesn't match Eleanor's or Charles's, but it bears a striking resemblance to a letter signed by Miss Clara, the spiritualist. Could she have written it? And if so, was she summoning someone to the garden tonight? Or years ago, Poirot's suspicions about Clara deepened. She's been too theatrical, too quick to steer the séance toward betrayal. He decides to test her, slipping into the conservatory where she's arranging her séance props. "A curious find, mademoiselle," he says, showing her the note but not the case. Clara's face remains serene, but her fingers pause on a crystal pendant, and Poirot sees a flash of recognition in her eyes. "I write many notes, Monsieur Poirot," she says airily. Spiritual work is full of messages, but her nonchalance feels forced, and Poirot knows she's hiding something. The chapter's climax comes when Poirot and Hastings revisit the garden, this time with a lantern to search for more clues. Near the fountain, they find fresh footprints, in the mud small, like a woman's, and leading toward a locked shed at the garden's edge. The shed is old, its door rusted, but Poirot notices fresh scratches around the lock, as if someone tried to force it open recently. With Hastings keeping watch, Poirot uses a hairpin from his pocket, a trick he's picked up over the years to pick the lock. Inside, they find gardening tools, but also a hidden compartment in the floor containing a small vial of liquid, unlabeled but with a faint chemical smell. Poison. Poirot pockets it carefully, his mind racing back to Evelyn's mention of poison in Lord Blackwood's death. The shed feels like a piece of the puzzle, but it raises more questions. Who was in the garden tonight? And is the vial connected to the past or the present? As dawn approaches, Poirot and Hastings return to the manor, the fog lifting slightly to reveal the first rays of light. Poirot's notebook is filling up. The cigarette case, the note, the vial. Clara's suspicious behavior, Charles's fear, Eleanor's deflections, and Grayson's unease. Even Miss Evelyn, the quiet governess, seems to know more than she lets on. The manor is a web of lies, and Poirot's starting to see the pattern. The note's words, "We must end this," echo in his mind. End what? A debt, a secret, a life. He knows the answer lies in connecting the past to the present, and he's determined to find it before the next séance, scheduled for tomorrow night. The chapter closes with Poirot standing by the portrait of Lord Blackwood, murmuring, "You, monsieur, have much to tell us, even in death." We're heading into chapter 5, where Poirot confronts the guests together and a shocking revelation threatens to tear the manor apart. If you're loving this mystery, smash that like button and comment below, who do you think left that note? Let's keep digging into this chilling tale. Dawn breaks over Ravenwood Manor, painting the foggy grounds in hues of grey and gold. But the light does little to dispel the tension that clings to the estate like damp moss. Hercule Poirot, fortified by a cup of his beloved tisane, is ready to tighten the screws. The cigarette case, the cryptic note, the mysterious vial from the garden shed, they're all pieces of a puzzle. But the picture is still maddeningly incomplete. Last night, as séance and the shadowy clues in the garden have convinced Poirot that the truth lies not with spirits, but with the living souls in this house. Today, he decides to bring the guests together, to stir the pot and watch their reactions as he lays out his findings. This chapter is all about confrontation, revelation, and the moment when the manor's carefully guarded secrets start to crack open. We're diving into a tense breakfast scene where Poirot's probing questions ignite tempers, uncover lies, and reveal a shocking truth that changes the game. Get ready, folks. This is where the mystery takes a sharp, dangerous turn. The breakfast room is a grand affair, with tall windows letting in the weak morning light and a long oak table laden with silver trays of eggs, toast, and steaming coffee. The guests are gathered, but the mood is far from convivial. Lady Eleanor sits at the head, her posture rigid, her eyes scanning the room like a queen assessing her court. Charles, her nephew, slouches in his chair, picking at his food and avoiding eye contact. Miss Clara, the spiritualist, sips her tea with an air of forced calm, her bracelets clinking softly. Mr. Grayson, the gruff businessman, butters his toast with unnecessary force, while Miss Evelyn, the governess, keeps her head down, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Captain Hastings, sitting beside Poirot, whispers, "They look like they're at a funeral, not breakfast." Poirot, impeccable in his tailored suit, smiles faintly. "Mon ami," he murmurs, "a funeral may yet come, if we are not careful." He's ready to shake things up, and the cigarette case in his pocket feels like a loaded gun. Poirot begins by addressing the group, his voice calm but commanding. "Mesdames et messieurs," he says, standing to draw their attention. "Last night's séance was most illuminating, Nan, but not for the reasons Mademoiselle Clara intended." Clara's teacup pauses midair, and Grayson snorts, but Poirot continues, undeterred. He produces the cigarette case, holding it up so the initials LB catch the light. "This was found in the garden, near the fountain. A curious place for such a fine object, wouldn't you agree?" The room goes still. Charles's fork clatters against his plate, and Eleanor's lips thin into a tight line. Poirot watches their faces, noting every twitch, every glance. He then unfolds the note, reading aloud, "Meet me at the fountain, midnight. We must end this." The words hit like a thunderclap. Evelyn gasps softly, Grayson's jaw clenches, and Clara's eyes narrow, but it's Charles who reacts most. Visibly, his face turning ashen. "I don't know anything about that," he stammers, but his voice cracks, betraying him. Poirot presses on, his tone deceptively gentle. "The initials LB, perhaps they stand for Lord Blackwood, whose death, I am told, was not as simple as a heart attack." He lets the implication hang, watching as Eleanor's hand tightens around her napkin. Or perhaps they belong to another. But this note suggests a meeting, a secret, a plan to end something. What, I wonder, needed ending? He pauses, letting the silence stretch, and then turns to Clara. "Mademoiselle, your séance spoke of betrayal. Was this note part of your performance?" Clara's smile is tight, almost brittle. "I commune with spirits, Monsieur Poirot, not with cigarette cases," she says, but her voice lacks its usual flair. Poirot's not buying it. He's seen her handwriting, and it's too close to the notes for comfort. He shifts his gaze to Grayson. "And you, monsieur, who did business with Lord Blackwood, did you ever meet him at midnight, perhaps to discuss debts?" Grayson slams his knife down, his face reddening. "You're barking up the wrong tree, Poirot. I'm here for the séance, nothing more." The tension is palpable now, the air thick with unspoken accusations. Poirot, sensing the moment is right, reveals his next card, the vial from the garden shed. He doesn't show it, but describes it. A small glass container, unmarked, with a faint chemical odor, found in a hidden compartment, he says, watching Evelyn flinch. "Curious, Nan, that such a thing would be hidden in a gardener's shed. One might wonder if it contains poison." The word lands like a grenade. Charles chokes on his coffee, coughing violently, while Eleanor rises, her voice icy. "This is outrageous, Monsieur Poirot. You accuse us without evidence." But Poirot remains unruffled, his eyes locked on hers. "I accuse no one, madame. I merely ask questions. And the truth, it always answers, in time." Hastings, watching the exchange, leans close and mutters, "You're stirring a hornet's nest, Poirot." But that's exactly what Poirot wants. Chaos forces mistakes, and mistakes reveal truths. The breaking point comes when Poirot turns to Miss Evelyn, who's been silent, her eyes fixed on her untouched plate. "Mademoiselle Evelyn," he says, softly, "you spoke of poison yesterday, of rumors surrounding Lord Blackwood's death. You knew him well, did you not?" Evelyn's head snaps up, her eyes wide with fear. I was just the governess," she whispers, but her voice trembles. Poirot leans forward, his tone gentle but relentless. "And yet you dropped a locket with the initials LB, a gift, perhaps, from Lord Blackwood." The room freezes. Evelyn's hands fly to her neck, where the locket should be, and her face crumples. "It was nothing," she says, tears welling. "He was kind to me, that's all." But her words falter, and Poirot sees the truth in her panic. More than a governess to Lord Blackwood, a mistress, a confidant. Whatever her role, it's a bombshell, and the other guests react instantly. Charles swears under his breath. Clara's eyes narrow, and Grayson mutters, "Well, I'll be damned." Eleanor, however, remains stone-faced. Though her knuckles are white, Poirot steps back, letting the revelation simmer. He's planted seeds of doubt, and now he watches them sprout. Charles, unable to stand the pressure, bolts from the room, claiming he needs air. Clara excuses herself, saying she must prepare for tonight's séance, but her haste betrays her. Grayson storms off, muttering about wasting his time, while Evelyn collapses into quiet sobs, refusing to say more. Eleanor, alone with Poirot and Hastings, fixes the detective with a steely gaze. "You play a dangerous game, monsieur." "Poirot," she says, "some truths are better left buried." Poirot smiles, unruffled. "The truth, madame, is like a weed. It grows, no matter how deeply it is buried." As she sweeps out, Poirot turns to Hastings, his eyes gleaming. "Mon ami, we have struck a nerve. Now we must follow it." The chapter closes with Poirot standing by the window, watching Charles pace the garden. Clara slip into the conservatory, and Grayson light another cigar on the terrace. Each guest is unraveling in their own way, and Poirot knows the vial, the note, and Evelyn's locket are keys to unlocking the past. Was Lord Blackwood poisoned? And if so, by whom? Was Evelyn's relationship with him the motive, or is there a deeper betrayal at play? The next séance looms tonight, and Poirot suspects it will be more than a performance. It might be a trap. We're rolling into Chapter 6, where Poirot follows a new lead that points to a hidden room in the manor and a secret that could turn this mystery deadly. If you're hooked on this twisted tale, smash that like button and drop a comment. Your guess about Evelyn's locket. Let's keep peeling back the layers of this chilling mystery. The morning's confrontation at Ravenwood Manor has left the air crackling with suspicion, like static before a storm. Hercule Poirot, with his sharp mind and sharper instincts, knows the guests are teetering on the edge, each one hiding something. Each one a potential key to unlocking the truth about Lord Blackwood's death. The cigarette case, the cryptic note, the mysterious vial, and now Miss Evelyn's locket have painted a picture of betrayal, but the canvas is still incomplete. As the afternoon sun struggles through the fog, Poirot decides to explore the manor's physical secrets, suspecting that its walls hold more than just memories. Captain Hastings, ever loyal but increasingly jittery, follows along, muttering about the cursed place, giving him the creeps. This chapter takes us deep into the manor's hidden corners, where Poirot uncovers a secret room that changes everything and brings the mystery one step closer to a deadly truth. Buckle up, folks. This is where the shadows of Ravenwood start to speak, and Poirot's little grey cells work over time. Poirot begins his search in the séance room, where the locked cabinet from Chapter 3 still nags at him. Its ornate carvings and stubborn lock suggest it's more than a decorative piece. It's a vault for secrets. With Hastings keeping watch at the door, Poirot uses his trusty hairpin to pick the lock, his fingers deft and precise. The cabinet creaks open, revealing a stack of old letters, a dusty ledger, and a small brass key, its edges worn but distinct. The letters are mundane, at first glance household orders, invitations, but one catches Poirot's eye, a note from Lord Blackwood to an unnamed recipient, dated a week before his death. It reads, "The truth must stay hidden. Meet me in the study." The handwriting matches the note from the cigarette case, and Poirot's pulse quickens. The study, he thinks, might hold the next clue. Hastings, peering over his shoulder, whispers, "Good Lord, Poirot, this is getting serious." Poirot nods, pocketing the key. "Mon ami, it was always serious. Now we find the lock this key fits." Their next stop is the study, a wood panel room on the manor's second floor, cluttered with books, a heavy desk, and a portrait of Lord Blackwood that mirrors the one in the séance room. The air smells of old leather and cigar smoke, and the silence feels oppressive, as if the room itself is holding its breath. Poirot scans the walls, tapping gently, listening for hollow spots. Hastings, trying to help, rummages through the desk. Drawers, finding only pens and faded invoices. But Poirot's focus is on a bookcase behind the desk, its shelves sagging under the weight of dusty tomes. He runs his fingers along the edges, feeling for irregularities, and then click a panel. Shifts when he presses a carved rosette. The bookcase swings inward, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Hastings gasps, a secret passage, Poirot, just like in the novels. Poirot's eyes gleam. Not a passage, mon ami, a room. The staircase leads to a small, windowless chamber, lit only by the lantern Poirot carries. The air is stale, thick with dust, and the walls are lined with shelves holding ledgers, files, and glass jars filled with herbs and powders. A small table sits in the center, scattered with papers and a single photograph, young Evelyn, smiling. Beside Lord Blackwood, their hands almost touching. Poirot's mind races. This room was Lord Blackwood's private sanctuary, a place to hide his secrets. The ledgers reveal more financial irregularities, large payments to a CM, possibly Clara, and withdrawals that match the debts in the library ledger. The jars are more troubling. One contains a white powder that smells faintly like the vial from the garden shed. Poison, Poirot suspects, though he'll need to confirm it. Hastings, wide-eyed, picks up the photograph. Evelyn and Blackwood. This is scandalous, Poirot. But Poirot's attention is on a locked diary, its leather cover embossed with LB. The brass key fits perfectly, and inside, Poirot finds entries detailing Blackwood's fears. They know. I cannot trust E or C, the money is gone, and so is my time. The diary is a goldmine, but it raises more questions. Who are E and C? Eleanor and Charles? Evelyn and Clara? Or someone else entirely? Poirot reads on, finding references to a betrayal in the family and a plan to silence me. The final entry, dated the day before Blackwood's death, is chilling. Tonight, the fountain. It ends here. The note from the cigarette case flashes in Poirot's mind, same words, same urgency. Was Blackwood meeting his killer that night? And is someone now retracing those steps to cover their tracks? Poirot pockets the diary, knowing it's too dangerous to leave behind. As they climb back to the study, he hears a floorboard creak outside. Someone's been listening. Hastings. Pale grabs his arm. We're being watched, Poirot. But Poirot remains calm, his mind already planning his next move. To test the guests, Poirot decides to drop a hint about his discovery without revealing the room. At lunch, he casually mentions finding a hidden cache of documents in the manor, watching for reactions. Charles drops his spoon, his face a mask of panic. Clara's smile freezes, her eyes darting to Eleanor, who remains impassive but grips her glass tightly. Grayson laughs it off, saying, "Old houses are full of junk," but his voice is strained. Evelyn, however, excuses herself abruptly, claiming a headache. Poirot follows her discreetly, catching her slipping into the conservatory, where she retrieves a small notebook from behind a potted fern. He doesn't confront her, not yet, but he notes the notebook's worn cover, similar to the diaries. Is Evelyn hiding her own secrets, or protecting someone else's? Poirot's suspicions deepen when he overhears Clara and Charles arguing in the hallway, their voices low but heated. "You promised it was over," Charles hisses. Clara's reply is sharp. "Keep your mouth shut, or we all lose. The chapter's climax comes when Poirot returns to the secret room alone, determined to examine the jars more closely. He finds one labelled aconite, a deadly poison known as wolfsbane, and its contents match the smell of the garden vial. This is no coincidence. Poison was used in Lord Blackwood's death, and someone in this house knows how. As Poirot seals the jar, he hears a faint click behind him. The bookcase door is closing, and he's trapped. The air grows heavy, and a strange dizziness creeps in, gas, perhaps, leaking from a hidden vent. Poirot's quick thinking saves him. He wedges his cane against the door, forcing it open just enough to escape. Gasping in the study, he realizes this was no accident. Someone knew he was close to the truth and tried to silence him. Hastings, waiting outside, is horrified. "Good God, Poirot, they tried to kill you." Poirot, dusting off his coat, replies, "Oui, mon ami, and in doing so, they have shown their hand." As the afternoon fades, Poirot sits in his room, the diary and vial beside him, his mind piecing together the clues. The secret room, the poison, the diary's warnings, they all point to a murder, not a heart attack, and a conspiracy that's still alive. Charles's panic, Clara's scheming, Evelyn's secrets, Eleanor's control. Grayson's defensiveness jest is a piece of the puzzle, but the killer's identity remains elusive. The second séance is hours away, and Poirot knows it's not just a performance, it's a stage for the next move in this deadly game. The chapter closes with Poirot staring at the photograph of Evelyn and Blackwood, murmuring, "The heart, it betrays as much as it loves." We're heading into Chapter 7, where the second séance spirals into chaos, and a new clue points to the killer's motive. If you're gripped by this mystery, hit that like button and comment below. Who do you think tried to trap Poirot? Let's keep unraveling this deadly web. The clock in Ravenwood Manor ticks toward midnight, each chime echoing like a heartbeat in the tense silence. After the near-fatal trap in the secret room, Hercule Poirot is more determined than ever to unmask the truth behind Lord Blackwood's death and the dangerous game playing out in the present. The second séance looms, and the air is thick with anticipation, fear, and something darker. Captain Hastings, still shaken from Poirot's close call, insists they leave the manor, but Poirot's eyes gleam with resolve. "Mon ami," he says, "the hunter does not flee when the prey is near." The guests are on edge, their secrets fraying like old rope. And Poirot knows tonight's séance will be no mere performance, it's a crucible where lies will burn away, or someone else might. This chapter plunges us into the heart of the second séance, where a chilling revelation and a sudden act of violence push the mystery to a breaking point. Hold tight, folks, this is where the shadows of Ravenwood strike back. The séance room is set much like the first night, but the atmosphere is heavier, the candlelight dimmer, as if the manor itself senses the storm brewing. The same circular table sits at the center, draped in black cloth, with the crystal ball gleaming under the chandelier's faint glow. Miss Clara, the spiritualist, is in her element, her robes flowing as she arranges candles and incense with exaggerated care. Lady Eleanor sits stiffly, her eyes cold but watchful, while Charles fidgets, his tie askew and his hands restless. Mr. Grayson, puffing on a cigar outside until the last moment, slumps into his chair with a scowl, muttering about more nonsense. Miss Evelyn, pale and withdrawn, clutches a handkerchief, her eyes darting to the portrait of Lord Blackwood above the fireplace. Poirot, seated between Hastings and Evelyn, observes every detail: Clara's two steady hands, Charles's sweat-beaded brow, Eleanor's iron control. He keeps the diary, vial, and cigarette case hidden, but their weight in his pocket fuels his focus. The trap in the secret room was a warning. Someone knows he's close to the truth. Clara begins the séance with a low chant, her voice weaving through the room like smoke. "Spirits, we call you again," she intones, her eyes half closed. "Lord Blackwood, reveal your truth." The guests join hands, though Grayson's grip is half-hearted, and Evelyn's fingers tremble in Poirot's. The chandelier flickers, and a cold draught sweeps through, making Hastings shiver. "It's just the wind," he whispers, but his voice lacks conviction. Clara's chant grows louder, and the incense burns stronger, filling the room with a heady haze. Poirot's senses are on high alert. He's watching for tricks, for sleight of hand, for any sign of manipulation. Then it happens. A sharp rap echoes from the table, not a knock, but a deliberate strike. Charles jumps, nearly breaking the circle, and Clara's eyes snap open, her voice dropping to a hoarse whisper. "He's here," she says. "He speaks of poison." The word electrifies the room. Evelyn gasps, her hand tightening in Poirot's, while Grayson snorts, "Here we go again." But Poirot's attention is on Clara. Her trance feels rehearsed, her words too precise. He leans forward slightly, his voice cutting through the silence. "Mademoiselle Clara, does the spirit name the poisoner?" The question is a dart, and it hits its mark. Clara falters, her eyes flickering to Eleanor, who remains statue-like. "The spirit accuses," Clara says, her voice unsteady. "One among us." Before she can continue, a loud crash erupts from the corner candelabra topples, its candles scattering across the floor. Hastings leaps up, shouting, "What the devil?" But Poirot's eyes are on the guests. In the chaos, he sees Charles slip something into his pocket. Small, glinting object. A key, a weapon. Poirot files it away, his mind racing. The séance spirals further when Clara, regaining her composure, points a trembling finger at the group. The spirit demands justice. She cries, her voice rising to a wail. He was betrayed by family, by love, by greed. The accusations hit like bullets. Charles's face crumples, and he mutters, "No, no, it's not true." Eleanor's eyes narrow, but she says nothing, her silence louder than words. Grayson slams his fist on the table, snarling, "Enough of this charade." But it's Evelyn who breaks, her voice a sob. "Stop it, please. He didn't deserve it." Her outburst stuns the room, and Poirot seizes the moment. "Mademoiselle Evelyn," he says gently, "who did not deserve it? Lord Blackwood, or another?" Evelyn's eyes widen, and she clamps her mouth shut, tears streaming. Poirot knows she's the weakest link. He'll return to her later. The tension peaks when Clara, in a dramatic flourish, collapses again, her head thudding against the table. This time, though it's no act. Hastings rushes to her side, but Poirot's there first, checking her pulse. It's weak, erratic. "She's been poisoned," Poirot announces, his voice sharp. The guests freeze, horror dawning. Eyes scan the table, the incense burner, Clara's teacup, a glass of water untouched by the others. He smells the cup, detecting a faint chemical Thames, like the vial from the garden. "Aconite," he murmurs, recognizing the scent from the secret room. Chaos erupts. Charles bolts for the door. Grayson shouts accusations, and Eleanor demands order, her voice cutting through the panic. Poirot calm amidst the storm. directs Hastings to fetch water and a doctor, though the nearest village is miles away. Clara's breathing stabilizes, but she's unconscious, her face pale as death. Poirot takes control, ordering the guests to remain in the room. He examines the scene, noting the teacup was Clara's alone, placed before the séance began. Someone poisoned her, but who, and why now? Poirot's mind connects the dots. Clara's accusations, her knowledge of betrayal, her possible link to the note in the cigarette case. Was she silenced to protect the killer, or was she a threat to someone else? He questions the guests, starting with Eleanor. "Madame, you prepared the tea, Nan." Eleanor's eyes flash. "I prepared it for all, Monsieur Poirot. I drank it myself." But Poirot notes her cup is untouched. Charles, sweating profusely, claims he saw nothing, but his pocket bulges suspiciously. Grayson admits to handling the incense burner, but denies tampering. Evelyn, still sobbing, whispers, "I didn't mean for this to happen." Her words linger, ambiguous but damning. The chapter's climax comes when Poirot, searching Clara's robes, finds a crumpled letter tucked in her sleeve. It's in her handwriting, addressed to E. Eleanor or Evelyn, and reads, "The truth comes tonight. Be ready." The letter is fresh, written today, and it confirms Clara was playing a deeper game, perhaps blackmailing someone. Poirot slips it into his pocket, his mind racing. Clara knew too much, and someone wanted her silent. The séance was a stage, but for whose performance? As the guests disperse, shaken and suspicious, Poirot pulls Hastings aside. "Mon ami, the poison was not meant to kill, only to warn. The killer is desperate, and we are close." The manor feels like a pressure cooker, ready to explode. The night ends with Clara recovering in her room, under watch, and Poirot staring at the portrait of Lord Blackwood, its eyes seeming to follow him. "You, monsieur," he murmurs, "have seen it all." We're rolling into chapter 8, where Poirot follows the trail of the poison and uncovers a motive that ties the past to the present. If you're hooked on this deadly mystery, smash that like button and comment below. Who do you think poisoned Clara, and why? Let's keep digging into the dark heart of Ravenwood. The second séance has left Ravenwood Manor in disarray, with Miss Clara's poisoning sending shockwaves through the already fractured group of guests. The dawn light filters weakly through the manor's heavy curtains, but the atmosphere remains as oppressive as ever, thick with suspicion and fear. Hercule Poirot, his mind sharper than ever despite the sleepless night, knows the clock is ticking. The aconite in Clara's tea wasn't meant to kill, its dose was too small. But it was a clear message. Someone wants to silence those who know too much. The diary, the cigarette case, the mysterious vial, Evelyn's locket, and now Clara's crumpled letter are all pieces of a puzzle that points to a murder years ago and a cover-up unraveling now. Captain Hastings, nursing a strong cup of coffee, looks at Poirot with bleary eyes. "This place is a madhouse, Poirot. How do you stay so calm?" Poirot's mustache twitches. "Mon ami, the calm is where the truth hides." This chapter follows Poirot as he traces the poison's trail, uncovers a devastating motive, and faces a confrontation that brings the killer's shadow into focus. Get ready, folks. The mystery is tightening its grip, and the truth is closer than ever. Poirot begins the day in Clara's room, where she lies, recovering, her face pale but her eyes sharp with defiance. The doctor from the village, summoned at dawn, confirms aconite poisoning, but assures Poirot she'll survive. Poirot sits beside her, his tone gentle but probing. Mademoiselle Clara, your séance was most revealing, but the poison, it was meant for you, Nan. Why? Clara's lips tighten, and she claims ignorance, insisting she's merely a conduit for the spirits. But Poirot produces the letter from her sleeve. The truth comes tonight. Be ready. And her facade cracks. You wrote this, mademoiselle, to someone called E. Who is it, and what truth did you plan to reveal? Clara's eyes dart away, but she murmurs, I only wanted justice for him, for Lord Blackwood. Her words are vague, but Poirot senses she's protecting someone or bargaining for her own safety. He leaves her with a warning. The next poison may not be so kind. Next, Poirot turns his attention to the source of the aconite. The vial from the garden shed and the jar from the secret room are his starting points. He slips into the kitchen, a cavernous space with copper pots gleaming in the morning light, and questions the cook, a nervous woman named Mrs. Harrow. She's adamant no one tampered with the tea tray, but Poirot notices a small apothecary bottle on a shelf, half hidden behind jars of spices. It's empty, but its label reads aconite medicinal use only, with a faint trace of powder inside. Madame Poirot says, holding it up, this is most curious for a kitchen, Nan. Mrs. Harrow stammers that it's for treating aches, prescribed by a local herbalist, but Poirot's not convinced. The bottle's placement too accessible, too convenient suggests it was used recently. He pockets it, noting Mrs. Harrow's trembling hands. Is she involved, or just another pawn in this deadly game? Poirot's next move takes him back to the secret room, where he examines the jars more closely. The aconite jar is nearly full, but its seal is loose, as if opened recently. He finds a ledger nearby, tucked under a stack of papers, detailing purchases of herbs and chemicals, including aconite, ordered by Lord Blackwood himself years ago. But one entry stands out, a delivery to CM, possibly Clara-dated a month before Blackwood's death. Was Clara supplying him with poison, or was she his confidant? Poirot cross-references the diary, finding an entry where Blackwood wrote, CM knows my fears. I trust her, but I fear her too. The pieces are aligning, but the motive remains. Elusive, was Blackwood poisoned for money, love, or revenge? And why is the past resurfacing now? To test his theory, Poirot gathers the guests in the drawing room, a grand space with velvet armchairs and a roaring fire. He doesn't reveal the aconite bottle yet, but he drops a calculated bombshell. Madame, et messieurs, he begins, his voice steady. The poison used on Mademoiselle Clara is the same that killed Lord Blackwood, aconite, hidden in this very house. The reaction is immediate. Charles gasps, his hands fumbling with his cigarette case. Eleanor's face hardens, her eyes like flint. Grayson laughs nervously, saying, You're grasping at straws, Poirot. And Evelyn drops her teacup, the porcelain shattering on the floor. Poirot watches them all, noting their fear, their guilt, their lies. He continues, the killer is among us, and they grow careless. A letter, a vial, a hidden rumor, point to a truth that cannot stay buried. He's bluffing slightly, but it works. Charles bolts upright, shouting, I didn't do it. I swear. His outburst draws every eye, and Poirot sees Eleanor's hand twitch, as if restraining herself. The confrontation escalates when Poirot turns to Evelyn, whose tears have dried but whose face is a mask of dread. Mademoiselle Evelyn, your locket bears the initials LB. You loved him, did you not? The room goes silent, and Evelyn's voice is barely audible. He was kind to me, but it wasn't what you think. She hesitates, then spills a devastating truth. Lord Blackwood was planning to leave Eleanor. He wanted to take me away, start over, but he died before. Her words trail off, and Eleanor rises, her voice cutting like a blade. Enough. You were a foolish girl, nothing more. The venom in her tone confirms Poirot's suspicions. Eleanor knew of the affair, and it's a motive for murder. But was she the poisoner, or is she protecting someone else? Charles, perhaps, whose debts Blackwood refused to pay, or Clara, whose role as CM is still unclear. The chapter's climax comes when Poirot, following a hunch, searches Charles's room while the guests are distracted, hidden in a dresser. He finds a second cigarette case, identical to the one from the garden, also engraved with LB. Inside is another note, in the same shaky handwriting as the fountain note. Pay or I tell. It's a blackmail note, and it's fresh, written within days. Poirot's mind races. Charles was being blackmailed, likely by Clara, who knew his secrets from the past. Did he poison her to keep her quiet, or is he a victim, too? As Poirot slips out, he hears footsteps behind him. Grayson, watching from the hall, his face unreadable. Snooping Poirot, he growls, but Poirot merely smiles, merely seeking. The truth, monsieur. The encounter leaves Poirot certain Grayson's involved, perhaps as the muscle behind a larger scheme. As night falls, Poirot sits in his room, the clues piling up. The aconite, the diary, the blackmail note, Evelyn's confession, Clara's letter. The motive is crystallizing. Lord Blackwood's death was tied to love, money, and betrayal. But the present danger is about keeping that truth hidden. Someone in this house is desperate, and Clara's poisoning was just the start. Poirot knows. The killer will strike again if he doesn't act fast. The manor hums with tension, its walls closing in. He murmurs to Hastings, the past is a ghost, mon ami, but the present is a blade. We're heading into Chapter 9, where Poirot stages a trap of his own, and a final revelation brings the killer into the open. If you're gripped by this deadly dance, smash that like button and comment below who's your prime suspect now. Let's keep chasing the truth through Ravenwood's shadows. The sun sets over Ravenwood Manor, casting long shadows that seem to claw at the walls, as if the house itself is eager to spill its secrets. Hercule Poirot, his mind a whirl of clues and connections, knows the time for subtlety is over. The aconite poisoning of Miss Clara, the blackmail note in Charles's room, Evelyn's confession about her affair with Lord Blackwood, and the diary's cryptic warnings all point to a killer among the guest. A killer growing desperate as Poirot closes in. The second cigarette case, with its chilling note, pay or I tell, has confirmed blackmail as a motive. But the question remains, who is pulling the strings? Captain Hastings, pacing nervously, begs Poirot to call the police, but Poirot shakes his head, his moustache twitching with determination. Mon ami, the police will find only shadows. We must catch the truth in the light. This chapter dives into Poirot's boldest move, yet a carefully staged trap to expose the killer. The stakes are sky high, and a final revelation will shake the manor to its core. Hold on tight, folks. This is where the mystery explodes into clarity. Poirot begins the evening by gathering the guests in the drawing room, the same space where tensions boiled over at lunch. The fire crackles, but the warmth does nothing to ease the chill in the air. Lady Eleanor sits rigidly, her hands folded like a queen awaiting judgment. Charles, pale and twitchy, avoids everyone's gaze, his fingers drumming on the armrest. Miss Clara, recovered but shaken, clutches a shawl, her theatrical flair subdued. Mr. Grayson leans against the mantel, his cigar smoke curling upward, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. Miss Evelyn, her face drawn, clutches her handkerchief, her earlier confession hanging over her like a storm cloud. Hastings, at Poirot's side, whispers, "You're playing with fire, Poirot." But Poirot's plan is set he'll use the guests' fears against them, forcing the killer to act. Poirot stands, his voice calm but commanding. "Mesdames et messieurs," he begins, "the events of this weekend to sentences. A poisoning, a hidden room point to a truth we can know. Longer ignore. Lord Blackwood was murdered, poisoned by aconite, and the killer is in this room." The statement lands like a thunderbolt. Charles gasps, Clara's shawl slips, and Grayson's cigar pauses mid-air. Eleanor's eyes flash, but she remains silent. Evelyn lets out a small sob, her hands trembling. Poirot continues, holding up the second cigarette case. "This, found in Monsieur Charles's room, contains a note. Pay or I tell. Blackmail, Nan. Someone knows the truth about Lord Blackwood's death and seeks to profit from my tour to silence it." He pauses, letting the accusation sink in, then adds, "Tonight I will reveal the killer's name, but first I require one final piece of evidence." The trap is simple but ingenious. Poirot announces a third séance, to be held immediately, but this time he claims to have a new witness, a fabricated spirit, who will name the killer. It's a lie, but Poirot knows the guilty party will panic, fearing exposure. He watches the guests' faces as he speaks. Charles's eyes dart to the door, Clara's hands clench, Grayson's jaw tightens, and Evelyn's breath hitches. Eleanor, however, remains impassive, her gaze locked on Poirot, as if daring him to continue. He instructs everyone to meet in the séance room in 1 hour, giving the killer just enough time to act. "Mon ami," he whispers to Hastings, "watch. The doors, the windows, the shadows. The guilty will move, and we will catch them." While the guests disperse, Poirot sets the stage. He returns to the séance room, rigging a simple trap, a thread tied across the doorway, invisible in the dim light, to detect anyone entering early. He also places a decoyer, fake diary, filled with blank pages, on the table, knowing the killer might try to destroy evidence. Hastings, stationed in the hall, grumbles, "This is madness, Poirot. What if they come armed?" Poirot smiles. "Then we shall be ready, mon ami." He's not just relying on the trap. He's been piecing together the clues. The diary's mention of CM and E, the aconite in the kitchen and secret room, Clara's letter to E, and Evelyn's affair all point to a conspiracy, but the motive is now clear. Lord Blackwood's plan to leave Eleanor for Evelyn threatened someone's inheritance, reputation, or power. The blackmail note suggests Clara knew this and was leveraging it until someone poisoned her T-dot. As the hour approaches, Poirot's trap springs. He hears a soft snap, the thread in the doorway breaks. Slipping into the shadows, he sees Charles creep into the séance room, his hands shaking as he grabs the decoy diary. Before Poirot can act, Clara appears, her voice low and urgent. "You fool, Charles," she hisses. "You think burning that will save you?" Charles whirls, his face a mask of panic. "You said you'd keep quiet," he snaps. "You took my money." Poirot, hidden, listens as Clara reveals her role. She was Blackwood's confidant, knew of his affair, and has been blackmailing Charles for years, knowing he poisoned his uncle to secure the family fortune. But before Charles can respond, a third figure emerges: Eleanor, holding a small pistol. "Enough," she says, her voice ice cold. "You both betrayed me. The confrontation is electric." Eleanor reveals she knew of Blackwood's affair and Charles's debts. "You killed him, Charles," she says, "but I let you because it kept the manor mine." Clara, defiant, laughs. "And I kept your secret, Eleanor, for a price." Poirot steps forward, his voice cutting through the tension. "Madame, monsieur, mademoiselle, the game is over." He reveals the real diary, the aconite vial, and the blackmail note, piecing together the truth. Charles poisoned Lord Blackwood to erase his debts. Eleanor covered it up to protect the family name, and Clara exploited their guilt for profit. The poisoning of Clara was Eleanor's doing, a warning to keep her silent. Grayson and Evelyn, Poirot explains, were pawns. Grayson, a business rival who suspected the truth. Evelyn, a heartbroken lover who knew too much but stayed quiet out of guilt. Eleanor lowers the pistol, her face crumpling as Poirot's words strip away her defenses. Charles collapses, sobbing, confessing to the murder. Clara, cornered, admits her blackmail but denies any killing. Poirot, calm as ever, signals Hastings to fetch the village constable, who's been summoned discreetly. The chapter closes with the guests in stunned silence, the séance room. Now, a stage for justice, not spirits. Poirot, standing by the portrait of Lord Blackwood, murmurs, "The dead speak. Madame, when the living listen." We're heading into chapter 10, where Poirot ties up the final threads and Ravenwood's ghosts are laid to rest. If you're loving this thrilling climax, smash that like button and comment below. Did you guess the killer? Let's wrap up this mystery together. The séance room at Ravenwood Manor, once a stage for ghostly theatrics, now stands as a courtroom of truth, its candles burned low and the air heavy with the weight of confession. Hercule Poirot, his eyes sharp and his moustache impeccably poised, has unraveled the tangled web of lies that bound the guests to a decade-old murder. Charles's tearful admission to poisoning Lord Blackwood, Eleanor's cold complicity, and Clara's blackmail scheme have been laid bare, but the final act remains. The village constable, summoned by Captain Hastings, waits in the hall, ready to take the guilty into custody. The other guests, Mr. Grayson and Miss Evelyn, stand in stunned silence, their own secrets exposed, but their roles as bystanders confirmed. This final chapter ties up the loose ends as Poirot delivers his signature explanation, revealing how each clue led to the truth and ensuring justice for the silent dead. The manor's shadows are lifting, folks, but not without one last twist. Let's dive in and see how Poirot closes the case of the Séance of Silent Death. The room is still, the only sound the crackle of the dying fire and Charles's stifled sobs. Poirot stands at the center, his presence commanding despite his small stature. "Madame et messieurs," he begins, his voice steady and clear. "The tragedy of Ravenwood Manor is not one of spirits, but of human greed, jealousy, and betrayal." He holds up the diary, its leather cover worn but heavy with truth. Lord Blackwood, a man of secrets, planned to leave his wife, Madame Eleanor, for Mademoiselle Evelyn, a young governess who loved him. It was a motive for murder. He pauses, his eyes sweeping the room, catching Eleanor's icy stare and Evelyn's tearful nod. But the act, it was not Madame Eleanor's, it was Monsieur Charles, her nephew, whose debts drove him to desperation. Charles, slumped in his chair, buries his face in his hands, unable to meet Poirot's gaze. Poirot continues, laying out the clues like a master painter revealing a canvas. The cigarette case, found in the garden, bore the initials L.B. Blackwood's. Its note, "Meet me at the fountain, midnight." "We must end this," was his plea to Charles, a final attempt to settle the debts that threatened the family. But Charles, he chose poison aconite, procured from the manor's own stores. Poirot produces the vial from the garden shed, its faint chemical smell still potent. The secret room, hidden behind the study's bookcase, held the proof. A jar of aconite ledgers showing payments to C.M. Mademoiselle Clara, who supplied the poison and later blackmailed Charles for her silence. Clara, her face pale but defiant, clenches her fists. Her role as the scheming spiritualist exposed. Poirot's voice softens as he turns to Evelyn. "Mademoiselle, your locket was a symbol of love, but also of guilt. You knew of the poison. Nan, yet you stayed silent, out of fear and loyalty." Evelyn nods, her voice a whisper. "I loved him. I couldn't betray him, even in death." The revelation of Eleanor's role is the most chilling. Poirot faces her, his tone unwavering. "Madame Eleanor, you knew of your husband's affair and Charles's crime. You protected him, not out of love, but to preserve the Blackwood name and fortune." He holds up the letter found in Clara's sleeve, addressed to E. This, from Mademoiselle Clara, was a warning to Iwa, demand for payment to keep her quiet. When she pressed too hard, you poisoned her tea with aconite, a warning to silence her. Eleanor's composure cracks, her eyes blazing. "I did what I had to," she snaps. "This family was all I had." Poirot shakes his head, and in doing so, madame, you became as guilty as he. The room falls silent, the weight of her admission settling like dust. Poirot turns to Grayson, who's been a peripheral figure but not innocent. "Monsieur Grayson, you suspected the truth about Lord Blackwood's death, did you not? Your business dealings with him gave you leverage, but you chose silence for profit." Grayson's face reddens, but he doesn't deny it, his cigar long forgotten. Poirot's final piece falls into place as he explains the trap in the secret room, the gas. "It was meant to scare me, perhaps to kill. It was you, Madame Eleanor, who activated it, knowing I was close to the truth." He produces a small valve, found hidden in the study's floorboards, its mechanism tied to the secret room's vent. Eleanor's silence is her confession, and the constable, entering at Hastings's signal, prepares to take her and Charles into custody. The chapter's climax comes as Poirot addresses the group one last time. The Séance of Silent Death was no communion with spirits, but a mirror to your consciences. Each of you played a part: greed, love, fear, ambition. But the truth, it always finds its way. He pauses, his eyes lingering on the portrait of Lord Blackwood, its stern gaze softened in the flickering light. Justice is served, not by ghosts, but by the order of the mind. Charles, broken, allows the constable to cuff him, while Eleanor walks out with head held high, her pride unbroken even in defeat. Clara, though guilty of blackmail, faces no murder charge, but her reputation is shattered. Evelyn, tearful but relieved, thanks Poirot quietly, her locket clutched in her hand. Grayson slinks away, his bravado gone, as the manor empties. Poirot and Hastings stand on the terrace, the fog lifting to reveal a clear dawn. Hastings, exhaling in relief, says, "Well, Poirot, you've done it again." but I'll never understand how you keep your cool. Poirot smiles, adjusting his hat. Mon ami, the little grey cells, they thrive on chaos. It is their playground. They walk to their car, the manor looming behind them, its secrets finally at rest. Poirot glances back, murmuring, "Adieu, Monsieur Blackwood." Your silence speaks no more. The case is closed, but the echoes of Ravenwood will linger. That's the end of Poirot and the Séance of Silent Death, folks. What a ride, betrayal, poison, and a killer unmasked by the master detective himself. If you loved this journey through Ravenwood's shadows, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment below. Who was your favorite suspect, and did you guess the twist? Share your thoughts, and let's keep the mystery alive. Stay tuned for more thrilling tales, and thanks for joining us in unraveling this deadly puzzle.